You're listening to NIL Now, a podcast dedicated to the name, image, and likeness of today's college and high school athletes.
So we're going to explore the crazy and wildly interesting world of name, image, and likeness.
NIL Now, covering the latest sports business headlines and keeping you informed on the nation's top performers. This is NIL Now, where the stars of tomorrow are getting noticed today.
It's the Wild Wild West, but we're wrangling it in.
Presented by Headline Studio and Reddit. Here are your hosts, Lauren Sisler and Kevin Jones.
What's up, my friends? Welcome back to another episode of NIL Now, a production of Headline Studio and Reddit. This is episode 3, and we are so glad you can join us as we explore the crazy and wildly interesting world of name, image, and likeness. I'm Lauren Sisler, a sideline reporter for ESPN. I'm your host alongside former Virginia Tech All-American running back and NFL first-round draft pick to the Detroit Lions, Kevin Jones, a.k.a. KJ. How you been, my friend?
I'm good. It's been a good week. My alma mater is not winning too many games right now. So, I got to get myself back together. So I look forward to this show. So get my week going good.
All right, so here's the format of the show each week. We'll start things off with some of the top NIL news and headlines. We'll bring in one of our partners from Reddit, our good friend Bobak. And then our third segment will be an athlete, maybe a coach, agent, business owner that's immersed in the NIL space to give us some insight. So today we'll be joined by Gabe Feldman, the director of Tulane's sports law program and the host of Between the Lines podcast, which discusses legal issues in sports. Definitely looking forward to that conversation. I know Kevin is, because obviously he's got that legal mind, kind of understands this space from that standpoint. You smirking over there? I see your face.
I said, no, I wouldn't say the legal mind, but I've been around a few contracts.
You've been around a few contracts.
Exactly.
You get it.
I get it.
You understand it. So, yeah, we're looking forward to that conversation. So, Kevin, let's jump right into these headlines.
NIL headlines.
So, off the top, coaches and athletic directors are already supporting NIL collectives after the latest NCAA NIL governance. So, following the NCAA's latest guidelines for member schools on how to interact with NIL collectives, athletic directors are now promoting NIL collectives that raise money for their athletes. One of those being Tennessee Athletics Director Danny White. He tweeted a video urging fans to support your NIL-focused collectives, including the Spire Sports Group. And one of the things he put in there, I guess, quoted on the tweet, "We've got the best fan base in the country, in the greatest college city in the country, college sports city. Let's be the top NIL destination in the country." So there's support coming from him. Over at Auburn, you got basketball coach Bruce Pearl, baseball coach Butch Thompson. They appeared in a promotional video for Auburn-based collective On to Victory. And then lastly, Iowa's football director of recruiting Tyler Barnes tweeted support for Iowa-focused NIL collective, the Swarm Collective, urging fans to follow the group's account. So before we jump in, I want to get your thoughts on kind of this support and how people are chiming in, and obviously administrators specifically. But just explain to us again, and we talked about it in previous episode, but the difference in boosters and collectives, like just kind of explain like the layman's terms for the difference in the two.
So the difference between the two is before collectives existed, boosters were kind of the main way that schools are getting the support. They're getting a boost, right? They're getting a boost, a financial boost in their athletic department to support athletes through like facilities or, the stadiums, the locker room, things like that that's needed, scholarships. Those people are considered boosters. And then now the collectives, the funny part about that is that if you don't have an arm where you're marketing something or selling something, you fall right into that collective status / booster status. So that puts some regulations on you if you're not doing much with your collective. It could be looked at as a negative thing. In the past, it definitely was because, it was always said as our boosters giving money to athletes and things like under the table and all these type of things. But now in the industry, there's a separation between the two because collectives are legal. But you basically fall under that booster status if you can't figure out how to make this kind of work for hire. So where the athletes are actually working for that money.
Yeah, and that was the big key that you've pointed out before, is that you've actually got to be putting in that work and doing something in exchange for. So it can't just be like, oh, we're going to give you this, or we're going to pay you this money to be the sponsor of, let's just say, a car company. And, oh, by the way, you do nothing to promote that car, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So there needs to be some evidence. Yeah, you need the evidence. You need to evidence the work that you're doing. It should be obvious. It shouldn't be, too many gray areas. And I think that's pretty much the difference between boosters and collectives. A collective is an NIL era term.
Exactly. So that's something that obviously has just come about. And I think, again, there have been gray areas between what that means with the boosters and whatnot. But how have you seen the shift? I guess when you look at the shift and seeing even, Danny White, the athletic director of Tennessee Athletics, like he is on Twitter talking about supporting this NIL, bring NIL to us. To me, it's almost like, if you can't beat them, join them, right? It's that thought process of, back in the day, like who's paying who? Well, at this point, everybody's doing it. So if you don't get in on it, whether you like NIL or not, it's here to stay.
Oh, yeah.
So you got to get in on it. And so I think he's essentially, supporting the charge and championing and saying, hey, like, let's get our dollars here so that we can recruit good talent and continue to have the success that we're seeing as a result of that right now at Tennessee.
Yeah, it's funny because, NIL, after NCAA came out with some more rules and regulations last couple of weeks, it seems like they're prepared for NIL to be here by allowing athletic directors and administrators to route money to different collectives or be in support of them vocally or even on social media, as you just mentioned. Something that I think a lot of people also don't understand is like athletics, they call athletics like the front porch of the universities. So, because it's the big brands at these Power 5 schools that you see that first sometimes before you know about the educational side of it. So when those two things are in tandem working together, that just lets you know how much power and influence that the athletic directors at these schools have. They fall right under the president pretty much, and they report to the president. So when an AD at a school supports any initiative, everyone else pretty much falls in line. So I think this is one of those things that they should be on the same page about with the collectives. They should kind of be in sync. It should be alignment at these universities with at collectives and athletic departments. So in today's landscape, they need to just, have and share common goals. The fact that they can support them now and publicly and be open about it, it's not a hidden thing. It's not taboo anymore. I think this is a great thing for the industry.
Yeah, love that. Second headline for the day. UCLA women basketball freshman Kiki Rice signed with Jordan as the brand's first NIL athlete. And she said, look, being Jordan Brand's first NIL athlete, and this is first NIL athlete altogether, not just female. This is NIL athlete, incredible milestone. And I think it's a testament to the hard work I've put in and all the people around me who have helped me get to this point. Signing with the Jordan Brand is another motivating factor for me to continue to work hard and achieve my goals. So what's interesting is UCLA is Jordan Brand. So that is one little nuance to all this, because if you're a school that's Under Armour, Nike, or whatever, another brand, Adidas, obviously you're not going to be able to rock Adidas out on the field and then you're going to get a deal with Nike. So obviously I think there's some of that kind of area within all this. But I love this deal. I think it's great for her, and it's been pretty cool to see people reach out to her. So kind of explaining that, how I guess creating these opportunities within these huge, Jordan, Nike, any of those brands, those shoe brands, like that's as big as it gets.
Oh yeah. Obviously those are the biggest brands in the world, especially, and they all have, influence. So I feel like that this deal, brand Jordan, having his first deal with a female athlete in the NIL era says a lot, about the brand and where they're standing on equity, social equity, relational currency, all these different things that this says. It's a big deal. I think it's a beautiful story, and I definitely think brand Jordan is conscious of this move, especially in college athletics, because of the Title IX issues that have been in the past and the things like that. Well, not in the past. They're current. So, even on the professional side of it, where equal pay and stuff like that is a hot topic, they made a statement with this partnership, and they're attached to Nike too. So Nike is getting a 2-for-1 here, but Nike needs to step up too. And it's funny because we were just talking about this on the last segment about, are these big brands going to step up just because they have the department of athletics, or they're signing with them? These athletes need to see a part of that action. So this is the first step for that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, one of the things that Rice had said specifically, she said, one of my biggest passions is gender equity, especially in sports. And she wants to be a voice for that and be, part of leveling the playing field. So I think this is certainly a great opportunity and for her to become the first to do it. And as I mentioned, she had several stars reach out, Carmelo Anthony, Mookie Betts, Zion Williamson, all did like a video just kind of welcoming her to the Jordan Club. So I thought that was pretty cool. You can check that out on Twitter. So headline number 3 here, Denver basketball's Carlos Fuentes brokered an NIL deal for his teammates. But here's the catch. This walk-on guard helped his teammates secure an NIL deal with local businesses last week. But you ask, why did he help others secure that deal and not himself? Well, as an international player and native of Spain, he cannot make money on NIL deals under visa rules. So because he can't accept endorsements, he can't get money for that. Why not help his teammates get some deals? So I thought that was interesting how he did that. And the deal is with Saucy's Southern Barbecue. That was in Denver. So Saucy's, I love that.
We need to get you a deal, Saucy Sisler.
Saucy Sisler, I know. Hello, Saucy. Bring it on. I'd love that. That'd be a great deal. But yeah, I think that's interesting, that obviously he can't, reap the benefits of NIL at this point, but he can help his friends do it. So, and I'm curious to know if he, under those NIL deals, is he not even allowed to make trades, like maybe not accept money, but like, does he get free Saucy Southern Barbecue for life kind of thing? Like, is that a possibility? I'd be curious to know what the sort of guidelines for that are, or is it just strictly like no trade whatsoever?
Yeah, I think it's no trade whatsoever. But one of the key things here is that when we talk about these guardrails and rules and the politics of it all, this is the type of stuff they need to be concerned about. Like, here's an example of a guy that's on a team and has marketability, and he's out here brokering deals for his teammates. So I just feel like, some stuff like this is where, the opportunities, if you're going to allow someone to be in our country playing basketball, right, then they should be able to partake in some of the things that the rest of the team is, especially from a payment standpoint. But Fuentes must be an awesome kid, raised really well in a home of high character people to be out here brokering deals on behalf of his teammates and can't really partake in it. But I'm pretty sure they're going to slide him some of that sauce on the side.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to get some of that drip.
That drip. I love it. I love it.
Barbecue drip.
That barbecue drip. Hey, we're only prefacing our next segment, y'all. Stay tuned for the drip when we bring Bobak on. It's pretty good. All right, so our fourth and final headline, Missouri kicker Harrison Mevis, which I love this story because I've had Missouri twice now this football season, just had them against Kentucky, came up short of the win this weekend, but had a chance to talk to Harrison Mevis about this trademark deal he did. So he trademarked 2 names, Thicker Kicker, and that's spelled Thiccer, the Thicker Kicker, and Money Mevis. And so this trademark allows Mevis to basically take and use these phrases on apparel, shirts, jerseys, hats, whatever. It's a massive list of things, but it's pretty interesting that he's been able to do that. And the Thicker Kicker is kind of a nickname that he has inherited as he is a bit of a bigger boy in terms of the kicking world, hard to tackle. And he is the school record holder for most field goals made over 50 yards. So, yeah, it's kind of fun to just see that he's able to do this. Capitalize on this. I did ask him, what's your plan with this? And he says, I don't really have a plan yet. I just felt like I needed to go ahead and lock this thing in.
Yeah, no, he's a funny guy, obviously, not taking himself too serious. But at the same time, that's some profound business acumen. I think to trademark something is not easy, for one. It takes lawyers and some capital to get that done. And it's not cheap at all. I think it's a stellar example of what some of these athletes should be thinking about their personal brands, right? That their teams and collectives could, leverage more opportunities for. He should also do something like Mevis and Butthead.
Oh, no, you didn't. No, you didn't.
That's going back like the Crash Bandicoot thing that we talked about.
Oh, my gosh. That is so funny. You literally, literally, I can already picture like T-shirts and his head like cartoon character.
Exactly.
With Beavis and Butthead. Oh my gosh.
But, and his Thicker Kicker, size Beavis and Butthead characters. That would be kind of cool. You imagine the helmet sitting on top of that head.
I know. There's so much you can do with this, and hopefully we're hoping we'll get him on the show. But great conversation with him. Another thing that made me laugh. So we talked to Coach Drinkowitz about this whole deal because this news broke right before our game that he was doing this trademark, and we said to Coach Drinkowitz, he said, like, so what do you think about this trademarking thing? And he said, if you ain't hitting them 50-yard field goals or whatever, you better be asking for a refund. No more money, Mevis. Better be asking for a refund. So he was giving him a hard time. He did tell us, though, that he has plans, and they really wanted to do it this past week, but nobody wants to pull a hamstring. But during pro day, the plan is for Mr. Harrison Mevis, the money Mevis, the thicker kicker, to run the 50-yard dash against Coach Drinkowitz and see who can win that race on pro day. So I hope somebody's filming that because that is going to be epic.
Well, Drinkowitz has a name too. He seems like he needs a brand after that name, Drinkowitz.
I know.
They need that up in the stadium boxes where you can go and purchase some Drinkowitz. Whether that does, see, it has something.
Some
I don't
drinks
know.
and keep your wits about you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be an energy drink. That's
Play around with that one. I think there's some opportunity there.
I think it's interesting, this podcast and being able to have conversations with the coaches and administrators and players because this is all new for them too. So we're getting that fresh information. It's not like rehearsed where they could all say the same thing. So I think it's awesome.
That's what I say. Freaking fresh.
NIL headlines.
Alrighty, time to bring in our good friend now, Bobak. He helps run RCFB, the home of college football on Reddit, as well as Reddit CFB on Twitter. Bobak, what's going on? Episode 3. How's it going, my man?
It's going great. How are you guys?
Doing good.
Well, we're just living the dream here, figuring out all this NIL stuff, having some fun during college football season because these headlines just keep hitting us hard. It's a lot of fun, though. I'm really enjoying this. And this headline that KJ is going to bring to you off the top is a pretty fun one, I must say.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about Hendon Hooker's mustard deal, actually. So Spire Sports Group, the same collective that pledged to raise $25 million annually for Tennessee athletes, brokered the deal. As part of the deal, Hendon Hooker will promote French's content on his social media platforms, and French's gave him a pair of custom mustard Nike Air Force Ones. I don't know if he's going to wear them, but it's the mustard drip Air Force Ones.
They look spectacular.
KJ, Bobak, would you rock those if it were you?
It depends. If I'm in Fashion Week in New York or LA, then I wear them then. But you can't just rock those around campus. Come on now.
They're so pretty. I would put them on a shelf.
They're definitely a souvenir.
They have a drip to them, like you said. You don't want to be fucking up the drip, right?
A literal drip.
Swoosh has got like the mustard dripping off of it. It's amazing that they got it to look like that.
That, sneakerhead culture, a lot of custom kicks out there these days where kids are just customizing everything. So I wonder, I wish we had Hendon on here because we asked that question. I wonder who was a part of that process, who made those. They're cool, but I think, like I said, they're so out there, something you got to wear like at Fashion Week or something. And these days with Hendon having all of these, deals, he'll probably be getting an invite to front row at Fashion Week at some point.
Oh, absolutely. I think that would be great. And I mean, for those of you who may not remember what all of this is coming from, last season, probably one of the most memorable moments in the 2021 season, Tennessee was hosting Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin. The Vols failed to convert on 4th and 24 in the last minute, and the Vols fans weren't having it. So things were raining onto the field, and somehow, and this is actually one of the great questions that always gets brought up whenever this topic appears, is why did somebody bring an entire bottle of French's mustard? If you talk to Vols fans, you hear that, they have little packets, they have things like that in the concession. So somebody brought this bottle of mustard and in a moment of passion, hurled it onto the field, which got on camera, and thus a meme was born. So this has been something that's been ongoing, and to the credit of Vols fans, they've really embraced it. A lot of things have come up, like, enjoying if you've ever seen the game day that was actually at Knoxville this season, somebody had a giant French's bottle cutout on a sign in the background. So they really leaned into it. Vols fans have dressed their kids up as mustard bottles, in a newborn photo, which is really sweet.
Oh, it's a real thing. And Bobak, SEC Media Days Lane Kiffin comes through, you know, he walks through the entry hall and dude's got a mustard bottle there for him to sign. Like that's what we're rolling with nowadays.
It's perfect,
Sign
and
my
then the
mustard
response
bottle.
from a lot of fans on RCFB is just, this is truly like one of the best NIL deals they've ever said. Even a Georgia fan was like, this is a god tier NIL deal. It's absolutely beyond based. Some of the people were like, drawing lines from Game of Thrones. You've got to wear it like armor. It can never be used against you. Rocky Top knows only one condiment, and its name is French's.
This needs to be strategy for other collectives.
But here's my real question. Like, what if you don't like mustard? Like, what if you're Hendon Hooker and you, for real, like, you ain't putting mustard on my hot dog? I'm just going to say that right now. I like ketchup straight up. Mustard ain't happening.
That's funny, man. As a kid, I liked mustard, ketchup, mayo. Now I just like mustard on my hot dog. I don't know why. It's just
no. I'm the same way. I think moving out to the upper Midwest like I did, I got into the brats thing, and then it's just like you got to be really stingy with what you put on it.
It's the brats.
I mean, I'll do honey mustard all day long. Swirl in some honey, put a little sweetness on it. But that Dijon,
I like the spicy or brown mustard on a brat is key.
Now, speaking of players, somebody pointed out as they were discussing this Hendon Hooker deal that Ball State has a perfect player whose name is Yo-Hines Tyler. Y-O apostrophe Hines Tyler, who's a wide receiver for the Cardinals. And he's got to start knocking on. I mean, somebody's got to knock on doors for him. I mean, he's literally, you can't get a better branding than that. And, the Cardinals are red. So there you got the Hines, perfect,
Then you can have the real cool drip, right? The red drip, and it'll match all your attire. It won't stick out like a sore thumb, like bright yellow.
The red drip. The red drip needs to be a hashtag.
I like it. Let's roll into our second topic here. We're calling this Nebraska's Big Corn Energy Drink. That right there just leaves some imagination there. Your Big Corn Energy Drink. Claiming to be the first NIL energy drink, the company will give 25% of its profits from drink and merchandise sales to Nebraska football walk-ons. The company will act similarly to a collective, giving money to student athletes based on profits rather than donations. The money given to walk-ons will not be distributed evenly. Players who have been on the team longer will receive a higher percentage of what the company gives. So, with that being said, my first question is, like, what kind of flavor are we working with here? That's like the number one question. I like some energy drinks. I'm more of like a white monster. I love the white monster drinks, but are we allowed to do that? I guess we can plug anything and everything at this point because we don't have any guardrails up at this point on our podcast currently. But I love the white monster drinks.
That was certainly the number one question on Reddit was, why on earth, what is this? Not one person mentioned its actual flavor in that article. That's troublesome. That was the number.
I mean, is it like big corn, like cornstarch? Is it like straight up cornstarch? Frosted Flakes?
A Tennessee fan said, "Does it taste like what comes from a jar?" Because in Tennessee, you can get some good flavored things. Moonshine.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. That's exactly what I was thinking. But then, maybe they're going with the mystery flavor thing that, some of the candy places do. So
yeah, and they were saying, a lot of the folks who drink these energy drinks might not necessarily care what it tastes like, or we'll see. I mean, and does it complain? My favorite comment was actually one of the Oregon fans said, 10% ethanol must be added for flavor. Being a corn flavor. There's a lot of corn controversy, rivalry between Nebraska fans, Iowa fans, and to a lesser extent, some of the other states that produce corn, and who has a superior corn product.
That's funny. I've never even thought about that being a conversation.
Oh yeah, you get Iowa State and Iowa fans talking with Nebraska fans and perhaps Kansas fans, and you get into some serious corn rivalry.
Wait,
here.
so like you're literally taking like your competition off of the football field and you're going into the cornfield. Hey, I had a solid piece of corn for lunch today, speaking of, at the Greek place up the street. It's like a street corn kind of thing with cheese and paprika and all of that on
That's
there.
The best stuff.
That's some good stuff. But I don't know. I do love a good energy drink. It's got to be the right flavor. You got to sell me on it. I don't know. It's debatable.
Did we see the branding for this? Is there any photos of this company, energy drink company yet, or no?
It would be hilarious if it were like actually made in Iowa. That would actually be the funniest part of it all.
No, it's right here. Yep. That kind of looks like a Campbell soup can.
This is ridiculous.
Campbell soup can with a ear of corn on it. That's what that reminds me of.
Wow.
Campbell soup. Am I right?
Yeah.
Big corn energy, and they have a lot of corn stuff.
I'm sure that is going to be on the shelf of every young person in America soon.
And it says an energy drink for Nebraskans.
It's sugar. Oh, they have a sugar-free version as well. Okay.
Well, hopefully it uses high fructose corn syrup. That just goes without saying. One of our more dyslexic readers thought that stood for, head frost coach Scott. Which, yeah, intellectual, aren't we?
Wow.
Oh,
okay. So,
goodness.
and then on the can, it has 25% of the profits go to Nebraska football walk-ons.
Yeah. So at least they're being open and honest. $32 for a 12-pack. What are you thinking about that price point? We feeling good about that?
Well, energy is a little more expensive, right? Energy drinks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, 12 fluid ounces. I mean, and I guess my question is how much caffeine is in that big corn energy?
Absolutely. And, it's important to just note that the reason this is kind of important in Nebraska is the walk-on program there has always been a huge part of the culture. Every program obviously has got a walk-on program, but at Nebraska, it's always been kind of something they hold somewhat at a higher esteem level because they've had so many key players come out of it, as well as, in addition to all their other great traditions like the black shirts, the sellouts, etc.
I think we're seeing more and more of that too with the walk-on programs. We've seen some different collectives and different groups that are promoting and helping out those walk-on groups. I think it's great. It's fun to see. I love that they're doing that. 25%. I think that's a nice gesture. I guess at some point, maybe if they listen to this podcast, they'll ship us some that we can crack one open on the air and see how it tastes.
Uh-oh, first sponsorship.
Winky. Big corn energy. Winky. All right, well, we're going to put a big bow on it right there. And hey, y'all, tune in next week because we're going to go off the rails a little bit with KJ and Bobak because I'm being told that these two have a love language of architecture together. They have this sort of affinity for architecture. They share some similar books there in their library, and we're going to have a little conversation about that because, I don't know, they're pretty cool experts in that field. So lots to unpack. We appreciate you, Bobak. We'll see you next week.
Absolutely. Y'all have a good one.
You're listening to NIL Now.
All right, now we're going to bring on today's guest. His name is Gabe Feldman. He is the director of Tulane University's sports law program, a few legal issues in the progressing NIL space. So lots to unpack here, lots to talk about. But looking forward to having Gabe here explain some of these things. I'm going to let Kevin kick us off because I know he's got a couple of burning questions to kind of get us started here.
Yeah, how you doing, Gabe? It's good to have you on, man. One of the questions I just wondering about your program, your sports law program at Tulane. Can you give us a little bit of background on that and maybe some of your background as well?
Sure. So we have the first sports law program in the country at Tulane. Next year will be our 30th anniversary. I have not been here for 30 years in the sports law program, but we train the next generation of lawyers in the sports industry. And what we've been doing more and more over the last 5 or 10 years is training people who get a law degree, but then don't want to practice law, but they want to be a general manager or they want to work in the front office. So we really have a sort of a diverse mix of students who come here who are passionate about working in the sports industry and see a law degree as a good way to open the door, or who actually want to practice law with sports entities as their clients.
Wow, that sounds like a great opportunity for students at university really wanting to take that next step in the sports industry. How have you been marrying sports law, your classes, the programming with NIL? Is that obviously that's been coming up during this season?
Yeah, so I've been teaching and studying issues related to college athlete compensation for a long time. And I do a bunch of consulting in this area. And I wrote a white paper about 6 or 7 years ago at this point for the Knight Commission, where they asked me to persuade them or try to persuade them why college athletes should be paid for their NIL and how it could be done legally. So that was 6 or 7 years ago. And now that it's front and center in the news and Congress is looking at it and states are looking at it and judges are looking at it, it's hard not to marry it with what I'm teaching and talking about because it brings up so many difficult and complicated legal issues and social issues and race issues. So it's an incredible topic. Everybody wants to talk about it. Everybody wants to know why their favorite athlete or high school player is going to a different college than the one that they went to. So there's sort of never-ending discussions around this topic.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing you had mentioned, I guess last fall, you had said this is the biggest change in college athlete rights in our lifetime because of the very hard line the NCAA had previously drawn against athlete compensation. And you had mentioned this is something that you've kind of had your hand on for quite a while now. As you've transitioned into this space, what would you say is maybe the most eye-opening aspect of this to you? Maybe, I don't know if it's a surprise or really the opportunity to basically say it's about time. What have you really seen as things have started to unfold that has maybe really jumped off the page to you?
Yeah, I would say a couple things. One is, as you said, you look back and say, how did we wait this long to provide college athletes with greater rights, economic rights, health and safety rights? It's just something that is long, long overdue. The other thing I think that unquestionably is eye-opening, I'm not sure many people predicted it would happen exactly like this, but is this formation of collectives where you have boosters coming together to pool money to provide millions and millions of dollars to college athletes, sometimes purely for the use of their name, image, and likeness, sometimes I think pretty clearly to recruit them to come to their school. And we knew that was always a risk, but with the NCAA really taking a hands-off approach to this, it's opened the door for these collectives and these boosters to really sort of take control in a lot of ways of recruiting. But the last thing that I think is interesting is that it hasn't really, and doesn't look like it's necessarily going to shift the power among the schools. And I think that's what a lot of people sort of predicted, was that when the money started flowing to college athletes, the top programs were still going to be the top programs. It's just that some of the money was going to be spent on the athletes directly instead of just on the coaches or their facilities. So I don't think we're going to see a massive shift in the top 20 or the top 25 in the college football programs or college basketball programs. I think what we're just going to see is the college athletes playing for those programs are going to have a lot more money today and going forward than they did last year or the 80 years before that.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good perspective. I think that some of it will help some of the schools that hadn't had the chance to compete in that way, bolster their programs. But as you said, a lot of these universities have brands already that's been longstanding for 50 years, right? And some of those brands are always going to be strong no matter what happens, and this just helps them be even stronger. So I do get what you're saying. Even though the bottom tier may be able to move up, the top is still moving up too, and keeping those spots secure.
Yeah, and if anything, it may be adding a little more variety and entertainment because, as you said, there's some schools who weren't able to recruit some of the top prospects are now getting guys. I mean, look what Deion Sanders is doing. Look at some of these other schools where if you have a wealthy booster, a wealthy alum who wants to attract a top athlete, all of a sudden they have a chance. Whereas before, if they were recruiting against Clemson or Alabama or USC, they had no chance because their facilities are better, their coaches are getting paid more, travel was better. Now there is a chance for some of these smaller schools to at least be in the game.
Yeah, Gabe, and I think you use that term entertainment, and I think that's another key piece to all of this too, because we have had guests on our show that might not be at a top tier school, right? But at the end of the day, their NIL deals, what they're doing is attracting headlines, and it's bringing people to those universities, to those campuses, to now be like, oh, there's an awareness piece that might have not been there before. And even if it is not a top tier program that's, Power 5 or whatever, that you're getting that entertainment piece and there is value to it beyond just the actual NIL deal itself. It also, in this world that we're competing in, the way I kind of see it, because in recent years, these whole recruiting videos, right, or these commitment videos became such a big thing for these college athletes. And it was like keeping up with the Joneses. How am I going to outdo this person? What am I going to do that's so unique? You see it all over social media. Then it becomes like, nowadays with everything, like gender reveals and this and that, like everything on social media has got to be like the biggest, greatest, whatever, best thing. To me, it kind of became that way in the, recruiting space and the commitment space. And now you're seeing it transcend into like, what can these brands come up with to really steal headlines? And it doesn't have to be with the top athlete anymore.
Yeah, absolutely right. And thankfully, I think gender reveal parties are sort of gone. I don't see them as much anymore.
They're still out there.
They're not getting as much publicity as they used to get.
Well, it's hard to find creative edge on that now. Everything's played out. The golf ball with the big spark of whatever, or the, shooting balloons out of a cannon. Some of that stuff's played out, I guess. But
yeah, and I have 2 kids, and I was excited to learn their gender, but it's going to be one or the other. I don't really get the celebration. And
Gabe's talking to lawyer talk now. He doesn't want to hang out. He don't no partying.
We party, just not with the exploding blue or pink. But on the back to the NIL and the endorsements, there are, I think, 2 categories of NIL deals that we're seeing right now. One are the traditional endorsement deals or social media appearances, TikTok, YouTube. The other is the really wealthy alum who just say, I want that quarterback to come to my school, and so I'm going to call it an NIL deal and give them $3 million and maybe have them do a post here or there, but it doesn't really look like a real NIL deal. Putting those aside, the traditional legitimate NIL deals, the ones that pro athletes get, the ones that every other student on campus was allowed to do other than the college athlete, those are great. I don't think anybody thinks that that's a bad thing that college athletes are now able to be paid for that and that brands can get the value of their athletes. But, as you said, you don't have to be the star quarterback and you don't have to be at a Power 5 school. And we know that because all of the social media influencers up until a year and a half ago were not athletes because athletes weren't allowed to do it or weren't college athletes. So we know there's value in the person's image, what else they can do, how entertaining they are, not just who is the best football player, because you can be a great quarterback, but a pretty boring social media presence. And the brands want people who are going to track those million views or 10 million views. And it's not necessarily who can throw the best or who can be on the best team. So I think that's sort of the great equalizer, and it's just sort of the true meritocracy. The other stuff where it's recruiting dollars is different and a little more problematic.
Let me ask you a question on that. I think one of the other important pieces in this landscape of NIL is how it's legal in some states while you're in high school to ink an NIL deal, and other states it's not. How do you think that's going to shake out?
I think it's going to shake out that most states are going to make it legal because we're already seeing recruiting battles between states. There's already been stories where athletes have not only transferred schools, which happens fairly frequently to get more playing time or to play in a better program, but are now leaving the state entirely to play at a high school because that state allows NIL. So I think as long as it's not regulated federally, as long as there's not some uniform law that applies to every state equally, I think we're going to see states, just like at the college level, try to be more and more aggressive because they don't want to lose their top athletes. And if a top athlete's going from a state that doesn't allow it to a state that does, the state legislators are going to say, we got to stop this because we want to have the best, whether it's at our colleges or our high schools. So I think we're going to see that continue until Congress, if they ever do, steps in and says, no, every state's going to have the same rule.
So, for example, in Virginia, it's not legal right now for a high school kid to get an NIL deal to kind of go to a certain university. So you have players leaving the state of Virginia in the middle of their, high school career as a junior. They go to play in California as a senior, and then now they can collect on their NIL deals from a university. So just for the listeners who don't know that, that's out there.
I don't think anyone thinks that's good. I don't think anyone thinks that's helpful for the athlete, for the student. That's helpful for the parents.
Just think about it culturally. You have like a kid from in Blacksburg, for where I'm at, from like Southwest Virginia, going to Hollywood, California, just uprooting, taking the family. It's just a whole mess of stuff. So hopefully we can get that figured out.
Yeah, it sounds like the plot for a CW show or something.
So I have another thing I wanted to throw at you. I think one of my close friends may have a bone to pick with you. See, you didn't even know we had a connection. Matt Forte was my teammate in Chicago. He wants to know why you hadn't gotten this figured out before he got out of college.
I wish I could.
I bet there's a lot of people right now saying that.
Oh, yeah. Me, myself.
A lot of people. Me, myself, and I. Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah, I love Matt. I'm a Jets fan too, so I've had a lot of Matt Forte shirts in my
exactly
drawer.
Cool. I'll tell him you said hello.
He got paid very little for any of them.
Yeah, if any, right?
Hey, Gabe, one last question before we let you go. I did want to ask, with the guidance on all this, because it is a new world we're trying to figure out what are some key pieces of advice that you would give to student athletes, people that are handling these deals? Because I think there's a lot of terminology that is just foreign to most people. And I've heard about certain circumstances, situations where these companies, entities have snuck in clauses that basically benefits them. And then basically the kids end up having to pay it back when they sign their next deal with another brand or with, the NFL, if that ends up being the case. And so really that becomes more of a loan than an actual NIL deal. So to me, it's, what's some advice you would give to these student athletes as they're kind of curating some of these deals and making sure they're protected in all of this?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that's one of the challenges without having any uniform legislation, because ideally we'd have a framework in place where if you're an agent that's going to negotiate on behalf of an athlete, that you have to register, and there's already sort of a framework out there, but it's not very well regulated or enforced. And then the third parties that are dealing directly with the athletes, because it used to be that the biggest taboo was to allow an agent on campus to talk to a college athlete because you're worried that they would start paying them or sign into a deal for when they turn pro. And now it's sort of, we need the agents, because without the agents, you're having 18, 19-year-olds potentially negotiating $1 million deals with third parties with no representation. And the schools are not allowed to be involved in the negotiation. They can maybe recommend a lawyer, but my advice, especially if you're one of those top athletes, is make sure you have someone helping you, someone who is looking after your interests, because there's really not much in place to protect you from these third parties, to protect you from these agents who might be looking after their best interests and trying to get the best deal possible, which is what really they're supposed to be doing. They're not supposed to be necessarily looking after you, the college athlete. So I just think it's ripe for abuse and corruption and exploitation. Athletes are getting more money, which is great, but we want to make sure that they know what they're getting into. They know what rights they're signing away. They know what they are obligating themselves to do. And again, right now, there's not that many people representing them. The smaller deals where you're getting a free meal to sign an autograph, I'm not really worried about that because there's not much that can go wrong there. But when you're signing one of these lengthy deals, where, as you said, you might be giving away your name, image, and likeness for longer than you realize, and the money may not be as powerful or as guaranteed as you think it is. So just make sure someone is helping you if you're negotiating a real contract with someone.
Great insight, Gabe. Really appreciate that. Certainly, a work in progress, trying to figure out, this landscape, but you've obviously had your hands on the pulse of it for quite a while now. So I'm sure this has been a fun and interesting time for you and maybe made your job even that much more fun, huh?
It has. It's, it's like one big NIL reveal party.
We just can't use pink and blue. We got to use green and something else.
Maybe we'll use a little yellow with that mustard drip.
Yeah, we got the green drip
right?
now. We got relish.
Relish. Yes, we got to get that relish in there. Thank you, Gabe, so much for your time today. We appreciate it. Great insight. And we'll check in with you at some point in time down the road.
All right. Sounds good.
And thank you again to our guest, Gabe Feldman, director of Tulane's Sports Law Program, for joining us today. You can find him on Twitter at Sports Law Guy in his podcast, Between the Lines, a podcast about sports and the law. You can also follow us at NIL Now Show on Instagram and Twitter, or on Reddit at NIL. Tell a friend, let us know what you think about the show, and find next week's episode out wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you to Bobak Hayeri and the Reddit College Football team for their help. You can follow them at Reddit College Football on Twitter and online at Reddit CFB. I'm Lauren Sisler, my co-host Kevin Jones. A big thanks to our audio engineer Colin Schmeling, our associate producer Dean Zolkowski, and our executive producers Richard Diamond, Selena Roberts, and Scott Broder. We'll talk to you next week on NIL Now.
Thanks for listening to NIL Now, presented by Headline Studio and Reddit.